and welcome back to Life Unpotted. Thanks for joining us today for another episode. We're sitting by the window in Austin. It's a little bit cloudy, but the sun came out and it's beautiful. It's this morning I went for a walk and I was like, wow, everything in nature wakes up together. And I never have really been present enough to realize that, but you wake up, you hear the birds chirping, you see everything so excited. Everything on this universe is so excited for the sun to rise. And that collectiveness, when you're sharing it, it's a really beautiful experience. So that's how I'm feeling today. Daisy, how are you? How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good. It's springtime here in Austin. And I think springtime, if a season were to be presence, it would be springtime because everything is fleeting during this season. Eventually the green grass will turn to dead grass. And the flowers that you catch a whiff of as you're walking around are so sweet and beautiful that they're temporary, their time here. And I think it really is a reminder of our life is also just a springtime. Like it's fleeting, it's going away. So I love springtime, particularly for that reason, because I think it's really matching me also where I'm at right now with recognizing the importance of sitting through the discomfort of ease and allowing yourself to cross that bridge and walk into presence. It's really difficult to do that. And that is the season that I'm in right now. I feel like emerging from a level of whatever the opposite of clarity is. And I just feel at ease for the first time in a while. And I really appreciate that. Like the way we walked around a botanical gardens yesterday. Doing these things, slowing down, really allowing yourself to slow down can be extremely rewarding because you're learning to tame your mind in those experiences. And I'm really trying to fill my time with things that are only enjoyable if you're present because it's a reminder to tame your mind. So that's where I'm at. I'm excited for this conversation today.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I feel the same way, which is really has been making me think about this whole concept of non-attachment, meaning like how we tend to be attached to things unfolding in life. And non-attachment, you could see this in Buddhism, Hinduism, just a very common way of talking about our internal suffering and how a lot of our internal suffering comes from clinging. And I noticed this happening to me yesterday, just these moments where I feel really, really good and I feel a lot of love and I feel really connected. I found myself in this tendency of being scared it's going to go away, being scared that what I'm experiencing is going to go away. And the analogy you draw with spring is so beautiful because we really have two ways to live. We can sink into the fear and grasp life like we're trying to hold on to quicksand. We can try really hard to hold on to what's happening. But when we do that, we see the sand just it's falling through our hands. We could try to grasp it, but we can't. And I think this is the essence of life and perhaps the most painful component when we're talking all the way to the levels of death, meaning we can't grasp our time here. It makes me think of that song, Life's like an hourglass glued to the table. No one can find the rewind button. Like, we can't go back in time. We can't go into the future. We can only be here. And that's uncomfortable for me. It's really, really uncomfortable. And I find myself in a very interesting place with my perception of life and viewing life from a really, really broad viewpoint of death and feeling scared about it. And it's interesting because it's almost like I'll have this processing of mortality, I'll have this processing of death, and it'll end me up in a place of, well, I can't do anything about that. I can't change that. And as I'm saying this, I still don't like that. It's still scary. It's still uncomfortable, but it takes me back into a place of, okay, but how can I just enjoy life while I'm here? And I wanted to read a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh that I was reading up on earlier when I was looking into this concept of non-attachment, just curious what other philosophers and Buddhists and thinkers have said about it. And he said, if we can model the ability to embody non fear and non attachment, it is more precious than any money or material wealth. Fear spoils our lives and makes us miserable. We cling to objects and people, like a drowning person clinging to any object that floats by. By practicing non attachment and sharing this wisdom with others, we give the gift of non fear. Everything is impermanent. This moment passes. The object of our craving walks away, but we can know that happiness is always possible. Beautiful.
Wow, that is beautiful. It reminds me how it is up to us how we choose to spend our lives. We can spend it in distraction because in order to enter this present moment that is absolutely stunning and beautiful, you have to enter it through some component of pain, I think. It's almost like you have to acknowledge your mortality in order to have presence. In order to be here, you have to acknowledge that I'm going to lose this. And I'd be curious to hear if there's other ways to arrive from people's point of view. But say, like the example, like we attach to things and people to the extreme. Think of the way we attach to our families. Think of the way we attach to our partners. These places where love fills the room. These places where love exists. These things that are inherently formed from the concept of love, from the, not the concept, but like from the experience of love. If you were to look at someone and say, we're going to take everything from you, they would probably say, okay, just don't take my family. Just don't take the people I love. And I think this quote places an important component on, it's not just material items that bring us suffering from holding on to. It's also people. And I think that's a really hard one to understand. And I think it's also a nuanced one to understand. Because if we have a family to love, if we have a partner to love, if we have friends to love, if we have these people, of course we cherish them, like that is what life is. But I think this quote, what it points back to is that in order for there to be love there has to be love within yourself. So even if everything was taken from you, you can still find love within yourself and with anyone and with others, the way that you found it with those who are in your life. And I think that's really painful and it's really scary. But I think that's why we have to live in the present moment, because it's not our job to bear the pain of what could happen to tomorrow, what could happen to me tomorrow, or a week from now, or 5 years from now, or 30 years from now. Our brain, I don't think, is meant, it's not made to comprehend those level of understandings, because we're meant to deal with things here. And if I'm worried about what's going to happen to you, Sophie, in 30 years, how am I going to exist and actually deal with things that are happening right now in my life? And how am I going to have love for myself right now? So I think I really appreciate how that quote touches on this component of attachment, especially with love and people and friendships and family, because I think that's where we can fall most dependent. But I also think that that is where we can stunt ourselves to not see what our capacity is to love, because you can find love out of your family. You can find love out of your partner. You can find love in everything around you, in every person around you. You can see it. So I think that's a healthy reminder to balance out the fear of losing within attachment, because attachment, I feel like, is inherently suffering because there's a fear. Attachment means, well, maybe we can pull up some more definitions in this episode. Maybe attachment, there's styles, but I think it's a level of understanding that no matter what happens to you, you will be okay. And I think that's what these teachings are trying to get at, is that the mind is inherently going to suffer if you don't have some level of, I don't want to say some level of control over it, but some level of even like non-attachment to your mind. Because that's how we actually find freedom in the moment, to enjoy the moment, because then we're not in the mind. And I'll pause there. So if I know you just looked up a definition, but I think that's a really beautiful quote.
So I have pulled up the attachment definition, and I think after last week's episode, I looked up attachment definition Buddhism. I think it provides more context that the Merriam-Webster definition might. So it says attachment means grasping or clinging. It refers to the human tendency to cling to people, things, or ideas in the mistaken belief that they will bring us lasting happiness and fulfillment. Attachment arises from our desire to feel secure, comfortable, and control in our lives. So, taking the example of love, you're in love with a partner, you're so in love, and you have this experience, which I've had of, but I'm so in love, but I'm scared because I don't want to lose that person. Or things are going so good with this, with this new job I'm in, but I'm scared it's too good to be true. It's interesting because looking at this definition and it lines up with the way in which attachment has shown up in my life is it arises from a fear that if I am experiencing so much beauty right now, I can't or I struggle to even appreciate it because I am fearful that if it goes away, I won't be okay.
It's sounding to me like relying on attachment, relying that I'll be okay because I always have this, takes away from actually experiencing the beauty of the connection in the moment. I think that when we recognize that we can't just rely on attachment because that'll always just bring us some level of comfort or certainty. I think when that's squashed, we're able, because that's painful, right? That's really painful to hard to accept. Say you're married to someone. Say, we think there's a certain level of certainty and like there is a certain vow of certainty within that of we're going to work through this, but that might not even mean anything depending on who the person is. But I think ultimately it's hard to understand that if you're looking at someone who you're married to and you're saying, we're married now, so we'll always be together and this will always work. That's not entirely true. There's always the air of chance that something can change. And I think if we don't acknowledge that, we're not living in our full potential. Because I think the little bit of anxiety that comes up, I mean, there could be a lot, but like having a little bit of anxiety about, right, like there could be a chance something happens when, we're not together. And I think there's a healthy dose of, right, like I don't have ownership over anyone. I can't control a situation. And I think if two people can come together and live in that and accept that, then there's going to be a much larger drive to want to honor and to experience whatever the relationship is or whatever the experience is in the moment. And that means, in a way you could say like, oh, getting married, it's a way to say, oh, okay, we checked that off. All right, so that means that we don't have to work on this anymore. This means that everything's going to be fine and we'll have each other. But it's like, it's a contract every single day. And I think that the remembrance that nothing guarantees anything is exactly what we need to be reminded every single day, that nothing is guaranteed. Because as soon as we believe that something is guaranteed, we stop caring about it. We stop trying. And I think of the plants we have in this apartment. I haven't thought about, okay, well, what if they die? Then that's going to suck because they're beautiful, but I don't put effort into them. So really funny, watered down example, but it's true. I think the point I'm trying to make is that our life will just become more beautiful the more we can bring this mentality into everything we do, from the walk to the local coffee shop, to the way you do the dishes, to the way you enjoy your mornings. Are you super anxious about getting to the day? Are you appreciating that you may never get this moment again on this earth in a morning during a springtime? You're going to slow down. You just don't know. And I think that's a big antithesis of attachment. Is attachment almost guarantees certainty. So that's why we cling to it. And I don't know that we can truly live, it's like the quote, I think it's like a Tim McGraw song or something. It's like, live like you were dying. It's the song about, his friend, or I think the songwriter is diagnosed with cancer. And it's like read the book that you want to read. Don't save it. Start by reading the one that you want to do. And that's just a metaphor for life of like, do it now because no other moment is guaranteed, and treat everything in your life that way.
I feel like recently I've been living that way, and there's something scary about it because I feel like I am dying. It's almost like in order to live such a meaningful, enriched life, you have to be connected to impermanence. And what you were saying, it was making me think about when we attach, when we're trying to control something, it's because we're trying to feel better. And again, it's taking it back to I. We're so caught up with thinking about ourselves that take the example of a relationship. I'm so concerned that if this ends, I won't be okay. Instead of thinking about the joint experience that's happening and the other person. So attachment, it really can take us away, I think, from because we're operating a state of control. We're operating a state of fear. We're not operating in a state of love. So when we're trying to do all these things, like manipulate circumstances to get the most out of it, like you do everything you can to feel so good the whole day. You do everything you can to hold on to this state. Number one, you're thinking about yourself, which is going to lead to misery because you're not actually thinking about the other person. You're not actually experiencing what's unfolding because you're so worried about, am I going to be okay if this doesn't happen a certain way? And number two, you just end up suffering because everything's fleeting. So it's like these days where I taste something really good. I have a really yummy meal in the morning and I just want more of it. I want another really good lunch. And then what am I having for dinner? But why can I not savor what I already had? We're always going to the next thing instead of grounding into what has happened, what is happening. I think we take the example of eating a delicious fruit. It's like you can chew it down really fast, or you can be like, wow, look at this beautiful watermelon with this pinkish red color. This came from the earth. Wow. And in that moment, you feel so connected to everything. You feel so connected to this whole experience that's happening, that's unfolding, that it doesn't even matter anymore. It's not about you anymore. And I guess I'm trying to articulate this point. I'm thinking through it in real time, so it might not fully be fleshed out. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, just because something's going to come to an end or just because life's fleeting doesn't mean we can't sink into life as it's already happening. And doesn't mean that we have to live in fear instead of really experiencing experiences. So if I'm not going to be in a relationship and get 30 amazing years together because I'm scared of what's going to happen when we're 70 and we're going to die, or I'm not going to be in a relationship for 10 years because I'm so scared of what's going to happen when we have kids and we're going to get divorced. We're just thinking in the future. We're in the mind. We're not here. And it's just a reminder that even when you start thinking about the future, no matter how real it might seem, it's still thought. And it's still fear. And it's still control. And it's not actually reality. We don't even know what happens when you die. We could go to another beautiful existence. This could be the 18th million time we've been in the eternal now. We don't know. We don't know. And when we can get comfortable with the unknown, we're no longer trying to manipulate because we don't know for sure that if this ends, when this ends, whether that's big picture or now, we don't know if the next thing will actually just be pointing us to truth, to what we need to go through.
And I think that is exactly why the practice of non-attachment is so powerful, because it's the recognition that on one end, everything is fleeting. I may not ever have this moment again. I may want this moment for the rest of my life, but I recognize I may never get it again. So what am I going to do? I'm going to enjoy this moment because that's all I have. And I think if we live our life through a lens of non-attachment, meaning in a way you take it moment by moment, because If you're living an attached life, you're always looking for the next thing to make you happy because you're so afraid to look at the truth. The truth is impermanence. That's the ultimate truth, is impermanence. And there's a lot of truth that layer that, like losing relationships, losing friendships, losing family, losing loved ones. Now, for the fun, nuanced part of that is that the whole point of the practice of non-attachment is so that you can enjoy the loved ones you have in your life more, so that you can enjoy the material possessions you have more, because you're not looking to these things as an attached manner. Like the definition of being attached was grasping, clinging, looking that something will bring fulfillment. But non-attachment is just the understanding that nothing will fulfill you. Nothing. And our brains are designed to make us think that something will fulfill us, maybe as a way to keep us alive, different route, I don't know. But if we're able to recognize that as our minds tell us to grasp for creating a family because that will fulfill us, as opposed to, I'm going to create a family, but I'm not going to grasp to it to fulfill me, because I fulfill myself every single day when I wake up, because I enjoy every single moment, because I allow myself to recognize impermanence. You can do the exact same things in life. It's just going through it with a different mentality. It's just going to cause a lot less suffering. Suffering is inevitable, but we can perpetuate our own suffering. And I think attachment does exactly that.
So this is obviously making me think about inner peace, inner fulfillment, how everything that we have to cultivate has to come from inner. But it's making me think about like, okay, so when you're experiencing the beautiful, profound feeling of love with another person, right? And you're like, this is everything. This is profound. I feel so in love. I feel so amazing. I want this. How do you then go into the state of, okay, I'm in love with this person, but when I'm not with them, I'm still in this intense state of love? Is that recognizing that what you're really feeling in that moment with that other person, it's coming from you too. It's the strongest feeling of love you'll feel with another person, I think, is when two people who are full of love come together. So you're not any less complete when you go away from them. But it's like, it doesn't mean that when I have my cacao dessert or chocolate, it's like it's so good. Like it's just so good. Like for me, it's like a pizza or nachos, like the flavoring and all these things. And like, non-attachment's hard with things that taste so damn good.
Okay, but let me ask you the question. It's like the classic example of you just had a really satiating, fulfilling meal. You're not hungry. You're not. But your mind is telling you, I want something sweet. I want a dessert. In my mind, that is the experience of attachment, because you are looking for that thing, that sweet treat to fulfill you. So I think in that moment, the whole point of non-attachment is to say, that's not going to fulfill me. So I actually don't need that. As opposed to, you're like, wow, a pizza sounds really good, but I know it's not going to fulfill me because I feel fulfilled in myself right now. So you have that pizza and you enjoy it because this is life and we get to enjoy things. So do you see the difference there? Because I can relate back to my life. And I think a lot of experiences I had that were with food that were out of attachment were that I felt unfulfilled in myself and scared about that. So I was going to find fulfillment through food. And it creates a questioning, confusing relationship with food because you realize the food briefly after eating it doesn't fulfill you. And you feel worse because you thought it would. When you recognize that you have to fulfill yourself, like say you're feeling super unfulfilled and you want to go have a brownie, but you're like, wait, a brownie's sacred, like a brownie's special. I want to enjoy that brownie in love. So what if I sit with myself and what if I have a meditation? What if I do a meditation And I sit with why I'm not feeling fulfilled, and I'm able to sit with that. And I open my eyes and I'm feeling at peace. And I'm like, but a brownie sounds really good. And I think a good question is, say you're eating your brownie and there's one last bite and someone goes for it. I think your attachment will show. And if you're like, no, like, I love you, I want you to have that bite. Or is it like, get away, I'm eating that? That's where your attachment shows, I think. Because you need that bite if it's going to fulfill you. But if you've already had most of the brownie and you're already fulfilled in yourself, that last bite doesn't mean anything to you.
Like, dude, I have seen this happen with myself with food. It's like, wow, it's just like you're thinking so much about yourself. Like, I even had times of like we're eating. It's like two separate people are coming together to get their meals. I don't care about you. I just want my meal. And that really, it's interesting because you ask the question of why does this matter? Why do I care? Why can't, why do I really need to care about if I'm thinking about somebody else? Because you don't realize it's making you suffer. Like that feeling that comes up of, oh, like do Daisy and I, do we have equal food in our bowls? Are we, like, do you have the same as me? Like, why am I putting so much emphasis on needing to make sure that we are both eating the same amount? Like food is such a good example of this.
In simplest terms, because you are looking to that food to fulfill you. You are looking to that food to make you happy. Because we've all experienced it where we go through periods of like, whether we're in love or whether we're super focused or whether something really exciting is happening in our life, we're not that hungry. Like we don't really care about food. Like we got to eat to be sustained, but it's like all of the obsession with food drops. So in those moments, the obsession with divvying up the food properly or, having a shared meal but separately, it's like all of this is because you are one, thinking about yourself, but you're also not actually meeting your needs with what you need. You're looking to displace your needs being met through making sure you get the right amount of food when in reality, there's a disconnect somewhere. And you're displacing that disconnect onto anything. Like this could be drugs. This could be alcohol. You know what I mean? We're just talking about food. It doesn't even matter what it is. Sure, some have worse consequences than others, but ultimately, it's not finding wholeness within you. You have to find wholeness within yourself first. So I just think that with attachment, it's tricky for a lot of reasons, but I think mostly because it can perpetuate a lot of suffering and it's super disguised.
So I looked up Alan Watts and seeing what he said about attachment earlier, because I was like looking at Michael Singer, all these people, just curious. And it's interesting. You see, everyone says a little bit different. Like Michael Singer was like, knowing you are whole and complete within yourself so that you can enjoy things in love and not fear. I love how people explain things beautifully. And Alan Watts was saying to be detached from the world, in the sense that Buddhists and Taoists and Hindus often talk about detachment, does not mean that you're not participating in it. And this is where it's like the whole thing of desire. Like it's not saying don't desire things. Don't want to have a beautiful meal with your partner or with yourself. Don't deprive yourself from the beautiful like fruits and vegetables that our earth grows. It's really shifting the mindset that we're experiencing all these things in. And yeah, like the food example really makes me think of that. It's just it just makes me think about coming back to what we always talk about, like when we're operating not connected to ourselves and we haven't filled up our cup, we're looking to everything else to fill up our cup. So it's like I'm standing here with an empty cup. I'm looking at Daisy, my partner, and I'm like, fill up my cup. So when I'm doing that, because I'm standing here, it's like a beggar begging. And in the Buddhist example, they said like someone drowning, grasping. Like you feel like you're in such need. You feel like you are so desperate to feel complete. So anything around you that might satisfy that, you're going to then approach it from that state. So then think of the difference of with your partner. Daisy, I have an empty cup, so I need you to be here. I need you to be in the apartment. I need you to oh, why are you doing that? It's pissing me off. Why are you doing that? It's frustrating me. You're the problem. You're the problem. We see that it's interesting. Like this applies in both our when we have problems with other people, when we're just not able to experience. It comes down to when your cup is full, meaning you're connecting with yourself. What does that mean? Okay. This morning I woke up, I meditated. I went on a walk. I sat in reality. I cried for a little bit because there was emotions coming up. I was with myself. I was with reality. I was with the experience as it's happening without trying to avoid it. So when we're actually going through life and like being in reality, facing truths, experiencing truths, it's almost like our cup's empty because we're avoiding. Like all that empty cup is showing to you that you're avoiding facing yourself, you're avoiding sitting with yourself, you're avoiding understanding how am I feeling, what am I feeling, you're avoiding really connection. Are you not having compassion for yourself? And we don't realize this because we don't learn as children how to handle our needs. So we look to other people and things to fill the needs. And I was thinking with the food thing, it's like, yeah, because we do need to eat to be fulfilled from a body perspective.
Okay, but physiological, there's a big emotional fulfillment, which are two very different things. So I just want to call that out.
Yeah, and that was what I was thinking. It's like we probably just don't know how to decipher between am I full right now? Because yes, we need food. Yes, we don't need love, but yes, love and sharing and the beautiful things of life is, of course, we should soak it up. We should enjoy all of this. But have been mistaken by the way in which we're doing it because we've been mistaken about our own value. We've been mistaken about our own sense of being and our own sense of purpose and our own sense of belonging. So how do we live in a life? How do we live in a state of non-attachment? I think really what it comes down to is when we are full, when we are connected to ourselves, we're not anxious, we're not in fear, we're not in control, we're not clinging, so we're not attached. We don't need anything else. And that is what gives us the capacity to truly be in love, to enjoy a meal, to enjoy the time with your parents, to enjoy your nature walk, to just enjoy. We are learning what it means to truly enjoy, the art of enjoying. And it just turns out that I'm curious if we were to talk to someone in the 1200s, back in BC time, or even 1800s, like, has our ability to enjoy lessened because our dopamine, this is where you're curious from a scientific level, Huberman, whoever, our dopamine pumps, the way in which we're able to enjoy things. We're trying to feel good too much, too often all the time. We're trying to be on TikTok all day, every day, feel good, that we don't allow ourselves to actually go through life. And I was saying to you the other day, Daisy, I was like, I wonder what it'd be like if I didn't go on my phone for a month. Like resetting these levels, I wonder how much validity and truth is in that in terms of learning how to enjoy things. Because it's almost like that fear of losing it is because you're not grounded in the moment, and you're not grounded in the moment because you're not connected to yourself.
Okay, you just said a lot. You just said a lot there. So there's really like two parts of it that I want to talk about. Like the first part being the way you show up in any sort of relationships in your life, whether it's friends, family, romantic, platonic, collaborative, work, whatever it may be. The example you gave of you are someone jumping into the water and there's like a life jacket right there, but you're screaming, help, 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 I'm drowning, because you can't save yourself. And I liked specifically what you said about this idea of you sat with yourself in reality. Like you sat in reality by yourself. And I think back to when I was single even, and I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't wake up and sit in reality. I would wake up and text friends and be like, it's 9 a.m. Like, where you want to go on a park walk? Like, what's going on? You know, oh, manic. Let's go get some coffee. Let's go do these things that are distractive. Let's build my life around what's distractive. So fast forward, here I am now. You quickly realize, maybe not as quickly as you would like to, realize in a relationship, if you aren't filling up your cup, you see how the relationship can't be filled up because it takes two people to fill up a cup. their own cups individually to fill up a cup of relationship. So I think this idea is so powerful of you, whoever's listening to this, you as the person sitting in reality. And there's so many ways to do that. I've found such a powerful way to do that is to find a meditation that really works for you. Like for me, there's always a part of me that slightly resists doing a Tara Brach meditation. But I know that's a good thing because they're hard. They're 20 minutes. They're hard to sit through. It's a body scan. It's an emotion scan. It takes a lot of sitting in reality. It takes a lot. Or another one for me is doing hatha yoga slowly, where I'm connecting to my breath. Like it's night and day. Like it requires me to sit in reality to do that. And sometimes sitting in reality, movement's helpful for that. I believe that's what yoga is made for, to be in reality. But I mean, they say possibly yoga stems from being able to meditate longer, doing it before. And I know that I always have a better meditation when I do yoga before because it's so hard for me to connect with my breath. So I don't want to veer off path. I want to stay on path. All of this to be said is I think this concept, this experience of sitting in reality, however you choose to do it, is so powerful because basically what it is it's taking accountability. And just think about how beautiful your life is going to be if you're learning to fill your cup up. Because you're not going to just be taking from everyone else's cup. If you're giving to other people's cups, they're going to return to you. And that's what love is. That's what connection is. And I think if we get stuck in a place of just looking to get our cup filled from people, we don't know what it means to be in a real relationship, whether that's friendship, family, romantic, whatever it may be. And that can be like the hidden piece that's so hard to figure out of like, why don't people love me? Why don't people want to be my friend? Da, 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 da. But it's like, how are you showing up? Do you want to be with yourself? And oftentimes sitting in reality can help you get there. And to clarify what I mean by reality, or more specifically, what I don't mean, is when there's an in-between moment. Are you sitting in reality, meaning are you just sitting there? Or are you going right to TikTok? Are you from moment to moment going to TikTok, to Instagram, to video games, to podcasts? You know, all of these things can be distractive when used improperly. And I mean, I think social media, especially, I think going into your second point, Sophie, I think it's made very easy. I think like these social media companies, like they do prey on this innate human instinct of wanting to feel better. But almost always we have to feel worse before we feel better. And that can mean in the lightest sense of like, you know, you've been really busy, you've been doing all these fun things on a Saturday, and all of a sudden you're like, these exciting feelings are going. Now, if you go on TikTok and scroll for an hour versus if you just kind of like get a glass of water, sit down in reality and just experience it, you're going to recharge. That's what I mean by sitting through the pain or the discomfort. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I do think that it is concerning with the way that we look at social media's usage in our society and like my usage of it. And I see how, like what you said, like it would be a really interesting experience and like fucking worthwhile. Like we don't want to, you know, I've seen these TikToks where people are like, oh, like mom was right. Like don't spend all your time on your phone. Like imagine like looking back at your life and it was just you're on your phone. You miss the flowers blooming. You miss the snow falling. And I think going to what you said of going on a social media detox, we were talking to our friend George and he was like, I just didn't go on my phone or talk for the whole day. It's like these dopamine resets in a time where we live in a society of constant dopamine being thrown at us. Like we have to be mindful of how to not get our dopamine receptors fried just by the nature of having a phone. All the notifications that are inherently programmed with the news and all of the apps. Like I got rid of that a long time ago, but like if you look at the inherent nature of a lot of technology, it's taking your dopamine. And I think, and to mention Huberman again, that was an episode I listened to by Huberman was on the chemicals of dopamine, on these chemicals, because we should deeply protect our dopamine and where we get it. Like we all want to experience amazing dopamine, but we don't want to spend it in something that's synthetic. We want to spend it in something that's real. So it feels to me that it's really important to be mindful of what we're consuming. It's really important to be mindful of how are you spending your time? Are you continuously emptying your cup by going on TikTok, thinking you're actually filling your cup up because that's what you've convinced yourself is how you relax and take time for yourself? I'll tell you right now, like that is not how you relax and take time for yourself, by looking at people doing their lives. That's not how you take time for yourself. Like you take time for yourself by sitting with yourself, dancing, singing in the mirror, listening to your favorite song, going on a drive. Like you take time for yourself by being with yourself. And it's impossible to be with yourself while you're on TikTok. You're not with yourself. You're with other people you don't know. You're spending your precious moments with strangers you will never know. That's the worst case scenario with how you're using TikTok. But it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. And maybe this is a segment we can go into as well, is social media and dopamine and the need for mindfulness within that, you know?
Well, yeah, it's like I look at my life the past 3 years and I have lived on my phone. I feel like I'm just coming out of this the past few months of reflecting. I think it started during COVID. I don't recall during like 2018, 2019. Like I was in law school. I wasn't on my phone that much. I really wasn't. And being at my office and like every lunch break on Instagram, every time I had on my phone. And what I'm realizing now is like how that's number one, I want to say social media is amazing. There's amazing things, amazing connections. I use it. We post our podcast on there. It's a great way to form connections. But like everything, going to this conversation, are we attached to it? Are we using it to make ourselves feel better? Or are we using it for connection, to learn? Everything has gotten so blended in that we don't even know why we're doing anything anymore. We lack intention, we lack intentionality, we lack mindfulness, mindful usage. And what I've seen is that like this usage of our phones, or again, it's not the phone, it's what you're doing on it. Okay. You could be on your phone spending hours reading. You want to connect yourself, reading about, for me, Alan Watts. Sometimes I do use my phone for that. But it's like, are you scrolling and looking at people's lives instead of reading a new book you want? I've just seen how there's so much information I would love to learn on this earth while I'm here. Like, there's a lot of things I want to learn. I want to learn about plants. I want to learn about creativity. I want to learn about exercise. I want to learn about yoga. It's endless. And yeah, TikTok can be a really great place to learn stuff. But again, are you cultivating that balance so that you're actually learning what it means to sit down and like get a book and learn and understand and feel connected to what you're doing? I think it comes back to connection. How connected are you to this information you're learning? Because like you start to build like this Rick Rubin book, The Art of Creativity. Or The Act of Creating. I don't even know the name, but guess how much I focus on that. But I'm so excited now to finally feel like I can focus on reading and writing. And I see how my focus has been taken away. My attention span. I remember seeing this on TikTok. I never believed it, but like it's real. Like I struggle with focus now. And I'm really excited to get back into the world, get back into reality, get back into watching the beautiful flowers bloom in the spring. Like hearing you say you could miss the snow falling. Holy shit. Like life is short, life is fleeting. So let's soak it up while we're here. Let's make the most out of it, guys. What are we waiting for? And yeah, I think this has been a really interesting conversation. It's interesting, like we talk about relationships, love, food, social media, attachment, anything we're using to feel better. We need to decipher, am I using this to feel better or am I using this to learn? What is my intention here? And if we can have and cultivate intention before we're doing everything and anything, we live a much more mindful, connected life where we're at peace. We really are. And we're learning what it means to enjoy. So, yeah.
Attachment. It's something that we can spend a lot of time thinking about because at its core, are we walking around unfulfilled? And if we're not aware of that, how are we going to take time to sit in reality for ourselves in a world that is constantly trying to get us to buy something, constantly trying to give our data so that it can profit off of us? Like it's almost like mindfulness and awareness is more important than it ever has been. And I can't even say that because I've been alive for 28 years. But it just feels it's more and more and more and more necessary, not even valuable. It's more necessary. It's more needed than ever because you see 2-year-olds on their iPads. And that is not teaching them what we're talking about right now. So as we become, as at young ages, we start to become more inundated with things that fill our mind, that tell us, this will fulfill you. The more options we have, the more imperative it is for us to recognize that nothing outside of us will fulfill us. It's us just existing in reality and us facing whatever is in front of us and sitting with it and being okay with it and accepting it. That is what's going to give us fulfillment. It's not going to be going at 3 a.m. to the bodega and buying a bunch of sour candy. We were just at a store and like the girl who was working there made a joke, don't spend too much time in here. You'll go crazy because it's full of consumer packaging that's all, so colorful and bright and neon. And it's true. And that's true for our existence on this planet right now. Like there's so many shiny things telling us this will fix you. This will make you happier. So give me your money. Always question that. Marketing preys on us in that way. It really does. Like when you really see it, like it's really, really disturbing because we have to be really careful and we have to be mindful of ourselves, our friends, our families, our kids. Like we have to be aware that nothing is going to make us whole other than allowing yourselves to be present in this moment and recognize that I can have the sour candy, but it's not going to make me whole. So Sophie wants to say something.
And I think this is just where it's just a flip of what are all the things controlling me to am I now in control of my life? Obviously, we can't control our life, but we can have intention. And we have the ability, like, yes, I understand life is uncertain. We can't control things, but we have the ability to put things into motion. We have the ability, like, how did we go to the moon, right? We can play and have fun in reality, and we can play with this intelligence, and we can have fun with it and craft it and build it. And I think what it's really coming down to is taking that power back to yourself, taking it back to love and not pain, taking it back to connectedness and not division, right? Like it all circles back. And when I could talk for hours about marketing and social media. And it's like, it's not even about anyone doing anything wrong. Like I get it. These people are building businesses and that's just how marketing has worked for all these years. That this is how you get someone to buy a product. Reality of it is like that's psychology. And I think what it really comes down to is like just the importance of knowing in your world, in your mind, what is your input you're putting in? Because your input determines your existence. It determines what you experience. What am I reading? What am I doing? What am I consuming? Who am I spending time with? How am I showing up? What is my relationship to food? What is my relationship to my partner? Questioning our being and our relationship with this world, our inner state with our outer state. And the more we can do that in a mindful way, the more we just won't feel as miserable. So lots to talk about here. Exciting because I'm excited to just keep talking going forward.
And I think just to summarize everything we said into like 3 words, mind your mind. Be mindful of your mind. Think about that. Think about what that means to you. Well, I appreciate all of you being here and giving us a reason to podcast. We love talking and we love that people listen to this as well. So we appreciate all of you being here. We'll be here next week. We hope you have a great day, great rest of your week, and a great weekend. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Enjoy the weekend. Get some time outside or inside with yourself, whatever you need. And thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week.